Good evening. Tonight we begin with something unexpected and brutal. You being Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, but not as you imagine. Nothing of grand imperial conquests. This time you'll be just you, an ordinary person living among mud-soaked fields, thundering cannons, and the weight of an empire on your shoulders. So before you settle in, like the video and subscribe, if this truly speaks to you. Now, adjust your light, take a deep breath, and let's cross centuries together. The morning greets you with a peculiar stillness, the kind that only settles before momentous events. You blink away the remnants of a fitful sleep, and for a moment, just the briefest of moments, you forget that you are Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of the French, Commander of the Grande Armée, and perhaps the greatest military mind Europe has ever known. The ceiling above your modest bed at Le Caillou farmhouse seems unfamiliar. Then reality floods back. Today is June 18th, 1815. Today is Waterloo. The weight of this realization settles not just in your mind but in your bones, a heaviness that seems to press you deeper into the mattress. Outside you can hear the stirrings of 72,000 men preparing for battle. Your men, your responsibility. Their lives balanced delicately on decisions you will make in the coming hours. There's a certain irony in how your small frame contains such immense power. How your hands, the same ones now rubbing sleep from your eyes, will orchestrate the movements that might reshape Europe once again. Or perhaps, though you dare not linger on this thought, orchestrate your final downfall. You rise slowly, wincing at the familiar pain in your abdomen, hemorrhoids, a soldier's curse made worse by long hours in the saddle. Your valet enters without, knocking, accustomed to the rhythms of battle mornings. "Your Majesty," he says, already laying out your simple uniform. No ornate imperial regalia today. On the battlefield, you prefer the plain green coat of the chasseurs à cheval of the Imperial Guard. Its simplicity serves a dual purpose: comfort during the long hours ahead, and making you less of a target for enemy sharpshooters. Though in truth, your small stature and distinctive hat make you unmistakable to anyone who has seen even the crudest caricature. As your valet helps you dress, your mind is already racing through the battle plans, calculations forming and reforming. You've defeated the Prussians just 2 days ago at Ligny, sending Blucher's forces retreating eastward. Now, Wellington awaits with his coalition army, British, Dutch, Belgian, German, arrayed on the ridge of Mont Saint-Jean. Breakfast is brought in, cold chicken, bread, and your preferred claret wine, watered down, as always. You eat mechanically, nourishment rather than pleasure. Food has never excited your senses. Power, strategy, and glory are your true sustenance. Through the window, you notice something that gives you pause. Rain still drips from the eaves. All night it had poured, turning the Belgian countryside into a quagmire. Your artillery chief, General Drew, had expressed concerns about moving the cannon through such terrain. The ground must dry, you had told your marshals last night. We attack no earlier than 9, but now, looking at the sodden earth, you wonder if even that will be sufficient. Your stomach tightens, not from the hemorrhoids this time, but from a flutter of anxiety. Time is not your ally. Every hour delayed is an hour for Blucher's Prussians to regroup and march to Wellington's aid. Your aide-de-camp enters with the morning reports. Marshal Grouchy, commanding your right wing of 33,000 men, sent a dispatch late last night. He is pursuing the Prussians toward Wavre, as ordered. Good, you think. This should keep them occupied and away from today's main event. Marshal Ney and Marshal d'Erlon await your final orders for the left and centre attacks. These men, Brilliant in their own right, veterans of a dozen campaigns look to you with a faith that sometimes feels like a physical burden. You scan the papers, make several annotations, and dismiss the aide with instructions to have your horse readied. Your mind briefly flits to the distant past, to artillery school in Brienne, to the young Corsican boy with dreams larger than his frame would suggest. How far you've come, from that ambitious youth to the master of Europe, then to the humiliated exile on Elba, and now to this moment, your 100 days of restored power culminating in what must be victory. As you mount your favorite horse, Marengo, named for one of your greatest victories, a light drizzle still falls. The field before you stretches north toward the ridge where Wellington has positioned his forces. Between you lies farmland, the villages of Hougoumont, La Haye-Sainte, and Papelotte, names that mean nothing now but will be etched in history by nightfall. Your staff surrounds you, awaiting the command that will set tens of thousands of men in motion. But you hesitate, eyes on the mud that sucks at your horse's hooves. The ground is too soft for rapid artillery deployment. The infantry will struggle, the cavalry might flounder. Every military instinct tells you to wait, and yet every political instinct screams that time works against you. Europe has united against your return. This coalition army before you is just the vanguard of the forces arraying to crush your reborn empire. "We will wait," you announce, your voice carrying that distinctive Corsican accent that years of French imperial life have failed to completely erase. The ground must dry further. We attack at 1 o'clock. You feel the ripple of surprise among your staff 4 hours later than planned. It is a gamble, but warfare has always been thus. A series of calculated risks weighed and measured by the scales of experience. You have won battles against greater odds before. Austerlitz, Jena, Wagram, names that ring with the glory of your past triumphs. Today will join them. It must. The morning passes with excruciating slowness. You ride along the lines, showing yourself to the troops. Their response is electric. Shouts of "Vive l'Empereur" follow you like a wave. These men, many veterans of your greatest campaigns, would follow you into the depths of hell itself. Their devotion should warm you, but today it only adds to the weight of responsibility. How many will not see tomorrow's sunrise? You push the thought away. Sentiment has no place on the battlefield. The great general must see men as pieces on a chessboard, valuable but ultimately expendable in pursuit of victory. At least this is what you tell yourself as you nod acknowledgement to their cheers, your face an impassive mask that reveals nothing of the churning calculations behind it. By noon, the ground has improved somewhat, though still far from ideal. You summon your marshals for final instructions. The plan is straightforward: a diversionary attack on the Hougoumont chateau to fix Wellington's right, followed by d'Erlon's corps striking the enemy centre while Ney's forces prepare to exploit any breakthrough. Your Imperial Guard, the elite of the elite, will be held in reserve for the decisive moment. As you explain the sequence, your confidence grows. It is a sound plan, tried and tested in previous engagements. Wellington, the sepoy general, as you dismissively call him for his years in India, has never faced you directly. Today he will learn what it means to stand against Napoleon Bonaparte. At precisely 1 o'clock, you give the signal. Over 80 cannon roar to life in a deafening symphony of destruction. The earth itself seems to tremble beneath this martial thunder, and you feel a familiar surge of adrenaline, the battlefield clarity that has served you so well throughout your career. Through your spyglass, you observe the initial assault on
Hougoumont,
The fighting is fierce, more determined than expected. Wellington has placed some of his best troops there, the British Guards. No matter, you think, the chateau is merely a diversion. The true blow will fall elsewhere. Yet as the hours pass, the diversion threatens to become a fixation. More and more of your troops are drawn into the brutal house-to-house fighting at Hougoumont. You send orders to merely contain the position, not to waste lives capturing it, but the battle develops its own momentum. Through your spyglass you watch British artillery tear holes in D'Erlon's advancing columns. The carefully orchestrated attack is bogging down. A familiar irritation rises in your throat, the gap between your perfect battle plans and the messy reality of their execution. You've experienced this countless times before, yet it never becomes easier to witness. Your attention is suddenly drawn to movement on your left flank. Marshal Ney, the bravest of the brave as you once dubbed him, appears to be organizing the cavalry for a charge. But this isn't the plan. Not yet. The enemy centre hasn't been sufficiently weakened by artillery and infantry. You dispatch an aide with urgent orders to hold the cavalry, but in the chaos of battle he cannot reach Ney in time. With mounting disbelief you watch as nearly 5,000 horsemen, cuirassiers in gleaming breastplates, lancers with their pennants fluttering, chasseurs and dragoons surge forward toward the enemy lines. It is a magnificent sight, one that might be celebrated in paintings for centuries to come. The afternoon sun, finally breaking through the clouds, glints off armor and weaponry as the earth thunders under thousands of hooves. But you, the master of warfare, see only the terrible mistake unfolding. Wellington's infantry, formed into defensive squares, bristle with bayonets like hedgehogs, without infantry support to exploit gaps, without artillery to break those formations first. This charge is doomed. Yet you cannot look away as wave after wave of your magnificent cavalry crash against those immovable squares. The scene becomes a grotesque tableau of bravery and futility. Horses impale themselves on bayonets in desperate attempts to break through. Riders fall to disciplined musket volleys. The British artillery, briefly abandoned as the cavalry approached, is quickly remanned as each charge recedes, pouring deadly fire into the next wave. You feel a cold knot forming in your stomach. Ney is spending your cavalry like water, and for what? No ground is gained, no decisive advantage secured. Just death, magnificent and pointless. An aide approaches with reports that Prussian forces have been spotted to the east. Your jaw tightens. Grouchy has failed to keep Blucher occupied. Now you must commit reserves to protect your right flank. Reserves that should have delivered the knockout blow to Wellington. The perfect battle, plan like so many before it, is unraveling in the face of friction and human error. But you are Napoleon. You have snatched victory from greater chaos than this. You dictate rapid orders, reallocating forces, adjusting the battlefield equation in real time. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the battlefield. The fighting at Hougoumont continues unabated, a bleeding wound that has consumed far too many of your troops. D'Erlon's corps has been badly mauled in their frontal assault. Ney's cavalry, once your glorious reserve, is spent and exhausted. And now Prussian columns threaten your right. The situation is deteriorating, but not yet lost. Never lost while you still command. While the Imperial Guard still stands ready, you scan the ridge where Wellington's forces hold firm. Despite hours of assault, their line remains unbroken. You can almost imagine the Iron Duke himself, impassive and calculating, directing his defense with the same cold precision you bring to your attacks. For a moment, a flicker of respect for your adversary passes through you. Then it is gone, replaced by steely resolve. There is still time, still a path to victory, narrow though it may be. As the shadows lengthen across the churned and bloodied fields of Waterloo, you face perhaps the most consequential decision of your storied military career. The Imperial Guard, your last reserve, your finest troops, await your command. To commit them now could deliver the decisive blow that breaks Wellington's line. To hold them back preserves your final defense should the battle turn further against you. The weight of empire, past, present, and future, rests on this single decision. You take a deep breath, feeling the eyes of history upon you. In this moment, you are not just a man, but a legend made flesh, carrying the dreams and destinies of France itself. Your hand rises, the signal is given. The drums begin their steady beat as the guard forms for attack. The best soldiers in Europe, perhaps. The world prepare to advance under your direct command. Veterans of a dozen campaigns, men who have never known defeat, straighten their tall bearskin caps and fix bayonets with practiced precision. As the Imperial Guard begins its advance toward the enemy position, you cannot know that this moment will be forever frozen in time, the last throw of the dice for the great gambler of Europe. You cannot know that names like Waterloo, Wellington, and Blucher will forever be linked with your own in the annals of history. You know only that the battle hangs in the balance and that you, Napoleon Bonaparte, have changed the course of history before through sheer force of will. Perhaps you think as the Guard marches forward with parade ground precision, despite the mud and carnage around them, perhaps you shall do so again. The rumble of artillery grows more persistent from the east, no longer a distant threat, but an immediate reality. Through swirling gun smoke and the chaos of battle, you can just make out the dark columns of Prussian infantry emerging from the woods near the village of Plancenoit. Blucher has arrived, defying both your expectations and the laws of human endurance. Just 2 days ago at Ligny, the 72-year-old Prussian marshal was trapped beneath his dead horse, ridden over by French cavalry and reportedly badly injured. Yet here he comes like a spectre, refusing to be banished, leading his men on a forced march to Wellington's aid, a remarkable feat of leadership that in any other circumstance you might admire. But not today. Today it threatens everything. You immediately dispatch General Lobau with the Vichy Corps to hold the Prussians at bay, 6,000 men against what appears to be over 30,000. The mathematics of disaster begin to take shape in your mind, yet you suppress them. Battles are not won by those who calculate only odds. They are won by those who create opportunities despite them. Your attention returns to the advancing Imperial Guard as they march up the slope toward Wellington's position. These men represent more than just your last reserve. They are the embodiment of your legend, your most faithful followers, the physical manifestation of the Napoleonic era itself. Their tall bearskin caps make them appear even more imposing as they advance in column formation through the mud and smoke. Veterans of Austerlitz, Jena, Friedland, Wagram, men who have never known defeat under your command. Until now, a voice whispers in your mind, but you silence it immediately. Doubt is a luxury afforded to ordinary men, not to emperors, not to you, who rose from obscurity to master Europe through sheer force of will and intellect. The Guard will break Wellington's line. They must. From your position on a small rise, you observe their advance through your spyglass. Something is wrong. The British line, which should have been weakened by hours of artillery bombardment and cavalry charges, erupts with devastating musket fire. "La garde recule," someone nearby shouts in disbelief. The guard is falling back. The impossible is happening before your eyes. Your elite, your invincibles, are retreating. Not in panic, not in disorder, but retreating nonetheless. The sight sends a physical shock through your body, a cold wave that starts in your chest and radiates outward. In this moment, you understand that the battle is lost. The knowledge settles in your stomach like lead, a certainty beyond questioning. All military genius, all strategic brilliance, all force of personality cannot change what is now unfolding across the blood-soaked fields of Waterloo. Tout est perdu, sauve qui peut. The cry begins to spread through your lines. All is lost. Save yourself who can. The most dreaded words in warfare, the harbinger of complete dissolution. You watch as discipline collapses, as veteran soldiers who have stood firm through hell itself now break and run. The contagion of panic spreads faster than any order could possibly counteract. Your staff officers look to you, awaiting the command that might somehow salvage this catastrophe. But what command can reverse such a tide? What words can rebuild? A shattered army in the face of advancing enemies on two fronts? For perhaps the first time in your storied military career, you find yourself momentarily frozen by the sheer magnitude of defeat. The sun is now low on the horizon, casting a golden red glow across the battlefield that might, in another context, be beautiful. You shake off your paralysis. There are still decisions to be made, still responsibilities to fulfill. You form a square of the old guard, the grognards, your grumblers, the most veteran of the veterans, around your position. Their discipline remains unbroken even as chaos engulfs the army around them. "The guard dies but does not surrender," someone shouts, a phrase that will echo through history long after this day is done. These men will cover your retreat, sacrificing themselves to preserve their emperor. The weight of their loyalty presses upon you even more heavily than the weight of defeat. As darkness begins to fall, you ride slowly from the field, surrounded by what remains of your staff and escort. Behind you, the sounds of battle continue. The Prussian pursuit is relentless, showing none of the customary restraint that normally follows a day's fighting. Blücher, it seems, understands the magnitude of this moment. This is not merely the end of a battle, but potentially the end of an era. Your era. The scattered remnants of the Grande Armée stream southward along the Brussels road, a once proud force now reduced to a fleeing mob. Equipment is abandoned, wounded comrades left. Behind, all semblance of military order dissolved in the primal instinct for survival. Your own thoughts turn to survival as well, though of a different kind, political survival. The news of this defeat will reach Paris before you do. Your enemies in the government, and there are many, despite your triumphant return from Elba, just 3 months ago, will sense weakness. The vultures will begin to circle. As your horse plods through the darkness, you mentally compose the bulletin that must somehow transform this catastrophe into a temporary setback. The art of spinning defeat has never been your forte. You have had so little practice at it. 14 years of near-continuous warfare across Europe, and how many true defeats? Moscow, certainly. Leipzig, perhaps. And now this, Waterloo. Even the name tastes bitter on your tongue. The night deepens around you as your small entourage continues its retreat. The rain has returned, a gentle but persistent drizzle that seems to mock the torrential downpour of the previous night. the deluge that delayed your attack and perhaps sealed your fate. Your uniform is soaked, your famous bicorn hat sodden and misshapen. Physical discomfort barely registers, however, against the landscape of your thoughts. Images flicker through your mind like fever dreams, the sun-drenched plains of Egypt where your legend began, the snow-covered Russian steppes where it first faltered, the small garden at Elba where you paced like a caged lion, and now these muddy Belgian fields where it may well end. You think of France, of Paris, of the throne you reclaimed against all odds. Will they welcome you back after this? The French have forgiven you much over the years. The conscription that drained their youth, the continental system that starved their economy, the imperial vanity that placed your relatives on thrones. Across Europe, they forgave because you brought them glory, because you made France the center of the world. But will they forgive defeat? More importantly, will you forgive yourself? The question haunts you as the miles pass beneath your horses. Hooves as farmhouses and villages slip by in the darkness. Dawn finds you at Charleroi, having ridden through the night. Your small party crosses the bridge over the Sambre River, the same bridge your army crossed northward just 4 days ago, full of confidence and martial pride. Now you return in defeat, the magnitude of which becomes clearer with each passing hour. Reports trickle in from officers who have managed to maintain some control over their units. The losses are staggering, nearly 25,000 men killed or wounded, perhaps as many as 8,000 taken prisoner, and countless others scattered across the countryside. Equipment, artillery, wagons, the military chest, all lost. The army, as a cohesive, fighting force, has ceased to exist. You dictate orders for rally points, for the gathering of stragglers, for the establishment of a defensive line along the French border. The mechanics of command provide a temporary distraction from the larger implications of what has transpired. But as your secretary writes, you find your thoughts drifting again, not to the immediate past or the uncertain future, but strangely to your childhood in Corsica, to the wild, rocky landscape that shaped your earliest understanding of struggle and survival, to your father Carlo, who sought accommodation with the French occupiers, and your mother Letizia, whose fierce pride and ambition you inherited. Would they recognize the man you have become? Would they understand the choices that led you to this moment? The journey to Paris passes in a blur of exhaustion, regret, and furious planning. You abandon your original entourage, taking a carriage with only a few trusted aides to reach the capital ahead of the news of your defeat. Time is now your most precious and limited resource. The coalition armies will regroup and advance toward France. The political wolves in Paris will sharpen their knives. You need to secure support, raise a new army, stabilize your position before these forces converge upon you. Sleep comes in brief, troubled intervals. Your dreams filled with the roar of cannon and the sight of the Imperial Guard retreating. Images that will likely haunt you for whatever remains of your life. Paris appears on the horizon, the city you have transformed through your vision and will. New bridges, triumphal arches, elegant boulevards, all bearing witness to your reign. As your carriage enters the city gates, you search the faces of the citizens for some indication of their knowledge, their mood. Have they heard of Waterloo? Do they understand what it means for themselves, for France, for you? Their expressions reveal little, perhaps a wariness, a hesitation, but nothing like the adulation that greeted your return from Elba. You proceed directly to the Élysée Palace, your mind already occupied with what must be done next. Abdication is unthinkable. You have returned from exile once. You can recover from defeat again. France needs you now more than ever. Or so you tell yourself as the palace doors close behind you. The next days pass in a whirlwind of activity. You meet with ministers, with generals, with political allies. You draft proclamations, issue orders, devise strategies for national defense. But with each passing hour, the reality becomes clearer. Your position is untenable. The Chamber of Representatives, emboldened by your defeat, demands your abdication. Your marshals, once so loyal, speak of the impossibility of continued resistance. Even your brother Lucien, who helped secure your rise to power, advises that the time has come to step aside. The walls close in, options disappear, and you find yourself once again facing the inevitable. Not on a battlefield this time, but in the corridors of power where you once reigned supreme. On June 22nd, just 4 days after Waterloo, you sign the instrument of abdication for the second time. The document is brief, dignified, abdicating in favor of your son Napoleon II, but even as you sign, you know it is a fiction. The 4-year-old boy in Vienna, raised in the Austrian court under the watchful eye of your former father-in-law, Emperor Francis will never rule France. The Napoleonic dynasty ends with you, its first and only true emperor. The knowledge should crush you, yet somehow it doesn't. There is a strange liberation in finality, in the closing of a chapter so grand and tumultuous that future generations will struggle to comprehend it. You retreat to Malmaison, the chateau once owned by Josephine, your first wife, your true love, despite all political calculations that led to your divorce. She died here just last year, never seeing your return from Elba nor your final defeat. Perhaps that was a mercy. The gardens where she cultivated her famous rose collection offer a temporary refuge from the collapse of your world. You walk the paths she once walked, surrounded by blooms she planted, and for brief moments, the weight of empire slips from your shoulders. You are not Napoleon the Emperor here, but simply Bonaparte, a man contemplating the strange twists of an extraordinary life. But even this respite cannot last. Reports arrive that Prussian cavalry are approaching, that Blucher has sworn to capture you and have you shot as an outlaw. The coalition powers will not risk your escape again, will not chance another return that might galvanize France once more. You must leave, and quickly. But where? America beckons, a new world, a land of republican ideals that once inspired your own early revolutionary fervor. Perhaps there, an ocean away from the intrigues of Europe, you might find some measure of peace, might even build something new from the lessons of your rise and fall. You travel to Rochefort on the western coast of France, hoping to board a ship for the United States. But British warships blockade the harbour, closing this final avenue of escape. On July 15th, seeing no alternative, you surrender to Captain Maitland of HMS Bellerophon, throwing yourself upon the mercy of your most consistent enemies, the British. I come, like Themistocles, to throw myself upon the hospitality of the British people, you write to the Prince Regent. It is a classical reference fitting for a man who has always seen himself in the mould of the great figures of antiquity, Alexander, Caesar, Charlemagne. But the British government has no intention of hosting such a dangerous guest on their shores. Instead, they inform you of your fate, exile on St. Helena, a tiny island in the South Atlantic, one of the most remote places on Earth. No Europe, no America, no chance of return, ever. The sentence hits you with physical force, the air seeming to leave your lungs as the full implications register. This is not temporary exile like Elba, with its proximity to France, its trappings of sovereignty, its potential for escape. This is oblivion. The deliberate removal of Napoleon Bonaparte from the stage of history while still very much alive. the ultimate quarantine of the ideas and ambitions you represent. The voyage aboard HMS Northumberland is long, 70 days of watching Europe recede, not just in distance, but in possibility. You spend hours at the stern, gazing at the ship's wake as it disappears into the vast Atlantic. There is much time for reflection, for the mental reconstruction of your life's campaigns, not just the military ones, but the personal and political as well. Victories and defeats, wise decisions and catastrophic errors, moments of transcendent achievement and periods of spectacular hubris. You begin to dictate your memoirs to those few loyal followers who have chosen to accompany you into exile. The telling and retelling of your story becomes not just an occupation, but an obsession, your final campaign to shape how history will remember you. St. Helena appears on the horizon in October, a forbidding volcanic rock rising from the ocean. Your new kingdom measures 10 miles by 6, your new palace, a damp and rat-infested house called Longwood, your new subjects, a handful of companions, and British guards instructed never to address you as Emperor, only as General Bonaparte. The fall is complete, from the marble halls of the Tuileries to this wind-swept outpost at the edge of the world. Yet even here, even now, something of the old Napoleon remains, the ability to adapt, to endure, to find purpose even in the most reduced circumstances. And so, as the years of exile pass, as your health gradually fails, as your circle of companions dwindles through departures, both voluntary and forced, you continue the work of shaping your legacy. The man who once reshaped the map of Europe now reshapes the narrative of his own life, crafting the Napoleonic legend that will endure long after both Waterloo and St. Helena are distant memories. It is your final victory, won not with cannon and cavalry, but with words, and the irresistible power of a life lived on a scale that few can comprehend. As sleep finally begins to claim you, gentle and insistent, the boundaries between past and present, between emperor and exile, between glory and defeat begin to blur. The sound of waves breaking on St. Helena's rocky shores transforms into the thundering of artillery at Waterloo. The dim light of your bedchamber becomes the flash of musket fire in the gathering dusk. The labored rhythm of your breathing merges with the drumbeat of the Imperial Guard advancing up that fateful slope. And in this twilight between wakefulness and dreams, you find a strange and unexpected peace. The knowledge that while battles may be lost and empires may fall, the story endures. Your story, a tale of ambition and brilliance, of hubris and humanity, of a life that, for better or worse, changed the world forever. So, I think you must be dreaming of all this now, of empires won and lost, of glory and exile, of the strange and winding path that leads from Corsica to St. Helena by way of Waterloo. I'll leave you with just the soft crackle of the fire to keep you company, its gentle light casting shadows that might be soldiers or emperors, or simply the playing of flames against darkness. Sleep well, dream of history, and remember that even in defeat there can be a kind of immortality.